The morning sun cast a golden glow over the quiet neighborhood of Westbridge, a place where the wealthy lived in towering mansions behind iron gates, their lawns manicured to perfection, and their cars gleaming like moving jewels. Yet within the same city, just a few blocks away, children played barefoot on cracked pavements, their laughter echoing between walls of faded paint and broken windows, and among them was a little black girl named Amara, whose big brown eyes seemed to notice everything that others overlooked, whose tiny hands clutched old books from the library that she borrowed but never owned, and whose voice, soft but firm, carried a truth that many adults had long forgotten. For Amara was different not because of what she lacked, but because of how much she saw, and it was on one peculiar day, as she passed the towering golden gates of the richest house in town, the mansion of the billionaire Richard Harrington, that her eyes caught sight of a young girl about her age sitting alone under the grand oak tree that stretched across the mansion's yard, her pale face half hidden by a curtain of chestnut hair, her hands folded on her lap, and her gaze fixed not on the world around her, but on something deeper, something hidden. And though cars drove past, gardeners trimmed the hedges, and visitors entered with briefcases and fake smiles, no one stopped to notice her, no one even greeted her, as though she were a ghost trapped in her own father's kingdom. And Amara, curious and unable to walk away, slowed her steps, staring at the girl, wondering why the billionaire's daughter looked so invisible to everyone around her. And it was then she realized the truth that struck like a lightning bolt. The girl was not ignoring them, she simply could not hear them. She was deaf, and while the world rushed past her, wrapped in its own noise and vanity, nobody cared to speak her language, nobody took the time to reach her heart. And Amara felt a sting of sadness, because though she had so little, though her mother worked 2 jobs cleaning houses and her father was gone, she knew what it was like to be ignored, to be looked past, to be treated as though her voice didn't matter. And in that billionaire's daughter, she saw herself reflected, 2 girls from 2 different worlds, but both invisible in ways the world refused to acknowledge. For days, Amara began to watch her from afar, noticing how the girl, whose name she later learned was Isabella, sat alone during parties where chandeliers sparkled and music filled the halls, how even when children from wealthy families visited, they laughed and played among themselves, leaving her isolated with her books or sketchpad, how her father shook hands with politicians and CEOs while barely casting her a glance, and how the staff in the mansion offered her polite smiles but no conversation, as if deafness meant she had no need for friendship or love. And Amara's heart grew heavier with each passing day, until one afternoon when she saw Isabella drop her sketchbook on the grass and no one bothered to pick it up, not even the maids, who were too busy carrying silver trays of drinks. And Amara, unable to bear it any longer, slipped through the open gate and ran across the lawn, picking up the sketchbook and handing it to Isabella, whose eyes widened in shock, as though someone had just broken through the invisible wall surrounding her. And in that silent moment, Isabella's lips curved into a small smile, the kind that carried more gratitude than words ever could. And though Amara could not yet speak her language, she raised her hand and waved awkwardly, and Isabella lifted her hand too, forming shapes with her fingers, signs that Amara did not understand, but which sparked something inside her, a curiosity, a fire, a determination, because she realized that if no one else would bother to learn, then she would. That night, in the small, dimly lit room she shared with her mother, Amara searched the old library books and the broken family computer that barely worked, typing in sign language basics, and though the screen flickered and the internet lagged, she stayed awake for hours, repeating gestures with her hands, fumbling but persistent, whispering Isabella's face in her mind, practicing until her eyes burned with exhaustion. And the next day, when she passed the mansion again, she caught Isabella's attention and slowly signed, "Hello," her fingers clumsy but sincere, and Isabella's eyes lit up with shock and joy, her hands moving fast in return, signing words Amara could not fully follow. But the bond was formed, a fragile bridge across a river of silence, and as days turned into weeks, Amara kept learning, stumbling and improving, until she could ask Isabella her name, her likes, her dreams, and Isabella signed back stories of colors, of music she could not hear but could feel in vibrations, of loneliness in crowded rooms, of longing for a voice she did not have. And Amara listened, truly listened, with eyes, with hands, with heart, and for the first time in Isabella's life, she was not invisible. But word travels fast in places where class lines are sharp, and soon whispers began to circulate. What was the poor black girl doing inside the billionaire's mansion? Why was the daughter of Richard Harrington laughing with her, smiling with her, when she rarely did with anyone else? And though Isabella's joy grew with each day Amara visited, shadows also crept in, for Richard himself noticed, and his brows furrowed in disapproval, for in his world, image was everything, and friendship was a currency, and what could the daughter of a housemaid possibly offer to his empire? And though he ignored Isabella most days, when he saw her hold Amara's hand and sign, "Friend," something in his pride burned, and he resolved to end it before it grew. One evening, after Amara had left, Richard stormed into Isabella's room, his voice booming though she could not hear it, his face twisted with anger, his hands gesturing wildly, but Isabella, unafraid, signed back fiercely, pointing to her chest, to her heart, to her friend, but Richard shook his head, slamming the door as he left, and though Isabella cried silently into her pillow, she knew deep inside that her father's wealth could not cage her forever, for she had found someone who saw her, someone who spoke to her not with pity, but with love, and though challenges loomed, her story was only beginning. And so it was that in the city of Westbridge, where fortunes gleamed and poverty struggled, two little girls from worlds apart found each other in silence, one teaching, one learning, both growing, unaware that their friendship would soon unravel secrets buried deep within the Harrington mansion, secrets that would shake not only their lives, but the lives of everyone who thought money could buy happiness, and power could erase loneliness, and the first spark of rebellion against the invisible chains of class and silence had already been lit in the hands of a little black girl and the deaf daughter of a billionaire. As weeks passed, Amara and Isabella's friendship grew deeper, their hands dancing in signs that bridged the silence between them, their laughter echoing in places where Isabella had only known emptiness, yet their joy became a thorn in the side of Richard Harrington, who saw this bond as a stain on his image, and one day he summoned Amara's mother, offering her hush money to keep her daughter away, but Amara's mother, though poor and tired, refused with quiet dignity, knowing that her child had found something rare and beautiful, and this refusal enraged Richard even more, for no one ever said no to him, not in business, not in life, but his attempts to sever the friendship only strengthened it, as Isabella defied his commands and Amara grew bolder, sneaking into the mansion gardens even when guards were instructed to stop her. And during one such evening, when the sky burned with a crimson sunset, Isabella confided in Amara through trembling signs, revealing a truth she had never shared. Her mother had not died in an accident, as her father claimed, but had left after discovering Richard's cruel secrets, secrets tied to stolen deals and ruined families, secrets that Isabella had pieced together from documents hidden in his study, and though she could not hear the threats her father spat at rivals, she had seen the papers, the forged signatures, the bribes, and she feared that her father's empire stood on lies that could one day crumble, and Amara, though just a child, felt the weight of this revelation, realizing that their friendship was not just about belonging, but about uncovering a truth that powerful men wanted buried, and as the two girls clutched each other's hands, vowing in silent promises to never abandon one another, Richard watched from the shadows of his mansion balcony, his eyes cold, his jaw clenched, already plotting the storm he would unleash to ensure that no poor girl, no matter how brave, would ever threaten his control, unaware that the fire had already started, and that his daughter, once invisible, now had a voice stronger than any wealth could silence. The storm Richard feared arrived sooner than he expected, for one evening, during a grand gala where the richest of Westbridge gathered in glittering gowns and sharp suits, Isabella, dressed in white silk, stood at the edge of the stage beside her father, her hands trembling not from fear but from resolve, and as Richard raised his glass to toast his empire, Isabella suddenly stepped forward, her hands moving in signs as Amara, hidden among the servers, bravely interpreted aloud, her young voice ringing through the hall, exposing her father's lies, the stolen contracts, the people destroyed in his climb to wealth, and the room fell into stunned silence as the deaf girl who had always been ignored finally spoke through the voice of her friend, her truth undeniable, her courage unshakable, and Richard, red with fury, tried to silence her, but it was too late. The guests had seen, the press had recorded, and the empire of deceit began to collapse that very night. Yet what mattered most was not the downfall of a billionaire, but the rise of two little girls who refused invisibility, for in the days that followed, Amara and Isabella became symbols of hope, proof that friendship could cross boundaries of wealth and silence, that truth could shatter even the tallest walls, and as they sat together under the old oak tree, hands signing stories of tomorrow, they knew that though the world was vast and often cruel, they had found in each other a home, a voice, and a strength no one could ever take away.